So those are the 5 tips, tricks, and hacks that I use to make the Jollylook a little bit more friendly when I'm out and about shooting with it. Hey, what's up you guys? Nick here. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been shooting professionally for the past 3 years, though I've had a camera in my hand for the last 16. And for those of you who are checking out another video, thank you guys so much. Make sure you are subscribed. So, based on the title, you probably know that we're gonna go over the 5 tips and tricks of using your Jollylook camera, or things you can do to make usage easier. Now, before I bought this camera, I did a lot of online research. The price tag's kind of up there at $69.99, and I wanted to make sure that it worked. Now, a lot of the reviews I read and a lot of the videos I watched, they had their complaints. And I was really hesitant to order the camera, but I had the money and I really wanted to give it a shot. Worst case scenario, I'd make my own video about my failures, and I have to say that I'm really happy that I ended up buying the camera. Now, we haven't been without our issues, and there are some things I've had to do to make shooting the Jollylook a more enjoyable experience for myself. I still stand by my 7 out of 10 review that I gave it, and I will link that right there, because so far the camera functions way better than I expected it to. But again, we had one issue, and that's going to be number 5, and that is the preemptive repair. Now, if you guys haven't seen it yet, I did a video where I actually fixed my camera, this one here, because it had a failure. I'll link that right there. But the basic of the failure is there's a piece of paper that's used as the shutter. Now that piece of paper gets jammed up, and most of the time with the failures I've seen, it causes no exposure. So I repaired this camera, and before I've actually even went out and shot this camera, I took it apart, removed that little piece of paper, and did away with it because I didn't want to get any non-exposed photos and risk it. So number 5 is the preemptive repair. Number 4, a lot of complaints I've seen on the camera is underexposure or overexposure problems. I've seen some people blame it on the bellows or the f-stop not being calculated correctly. My experience with it is that is false. And the reason I will back that up is I actually go out with a light meter when I shoot. This is a Sekonic model L308B. This is the light meter I use when I'm shooting 4x5, when I'm shooting my Kodak Pocket Camera number 1, and when I'm shooting any film camera, including the Jollylook. Now, the way I set this up in order to use the Jollylook effectively is I set it up to capture ambient light, essentially, to give me an ambient reading. And you can do this with any light meter. You can do this with the light meter apps, and the one that's called Light Meter or Light Buddy. Both of those have worked great for me when I was in a pinch and I needed to get proper exposure, and I didn't have this with me. So what you'll do is you'll set your light meter to 800 ISO, because the Fujifilm Instax film only comes in 800 ISO. And then you'll set your shutter speed to either 1/25th of a second or 2/50th of a second on your light meter. And the reason you do that is because with the Jollylook, you only have 2 shutter speeds. So when you have this weight inside the Jollylook, it's 1/25th of a second. And when you remove the weight, it's 2/50th of a second. So after you set your shutter speed and you set your ISO, you'll take your reading. And this tells me I need to shoot at f/22. Now the reason we do that is because you're limited with ISO and you're limited with your shutter speed. The only real adjustment you have is your f-stop, and I'll link the f-stop video there to go more in depth on what f-stop is. So you adjust your f-stop after using your light meter or your light meter app. So once you figure out proper exposure, you go ahead and take your shot, you spin your magical doodad, the photo comes out and it develops. I'm actually going to share 2 photos I took today. They're on my refrigerator right now. I'm really happy with both of them. First one is of my doggo, and I'm sure you guys have seen her in other videos. She's been featured in photos. She was my model in one of my early videos on the Yongnuo 50mm. I'll link that there. But as you can see in the photo, it is properly exposed. The sky is a little bit blown out, but that's because the sun was right behind her and there was some issues with that. But that's overall, the photo came out exactly how I wanted it to. Now, the second photo is my doggo and my girlfriend, and there's a little bit of motion, and again, the sky is blown out. Again, the light was right there. But as you can see, there's a little bit of motion. She was trying to hold the dog still, but it's still a pretty cool image. It's clear enough that I'm happy with it, and it's kind of a fun little camera to go around with and shoot with. So number 4 was setting up proper exposure using a light meter of some sort, whether it is a camera app or a proper light meter. Now number 3 is a little hack that I have. On the back of my Jollylook, the exposure chart. Now the exposure chart for me so far has been hit or miss, and really it just comes down to practice. I've gotten in the practice of just using a light meter, and I'm sure if I practice with that more and use some more film, I could get used to it. But your Jollylook actually comes with the same little piece of cardboard, and it has the light chart on it. So all I did was actually just cut out the light chart and taped it onto the back of my Jollylook. And that allows me to, in a pinch, figure out where I should be shooting at what f-stop in order to make sure that I get proper exposure. Now number 2, I learned this the hard way. The Jollylook doesn't have a built-in shot counter. It will not tell you when you're almost out of film, or if you've used enough film, or you haven't used enough film. So I generally use masking tape, just a quick strip of masking tape. Right now I've got a piece of paper scotch taped on there, and it's got 7 notches in it because I've taken 7 photos with this. Now I always carry a pen with me anyways, so I'll take my photo, I'll wind the doodad, and I'll put a tally mark on the back of the camera on that piece of paper, the piece of masking tape, so that I know how many shots I've already fired with this camera. And the reason I do that is, here's a cassette with a perfectly good piece of film. I thought that I fired all 10 shots, and I was wrong because I miscounted, because when I load film in this, I don't just blow through my 10 shots. I wait until I see an image that I really want to capture. I'll take my light reading, and then I'll take the photo, and I forget from day to day. You know, I've had a cartridge of film last 2 weeks before and just had no idea how many shots I had left on it, so I started taping something on the back in order to tell me how many shots I have taken, so then I can know how many shots I have left. Each one of these cassettes come with 10 shots, so that means with 7 notches, I have 3 shots remaining. Now this last little bit is actually when you're lining up your shot. The Jollylook camera doesn't come with a stabilizer as per se, so when you pull out your bellows and you latch it into your focal plane, it kind of needs a little bit of help. Now, if any of you are familiar with large format cameras or large format photography, you have things called tilt, where you can tilt your lens board like this here, back and forth, and it changes the photo. It changes what's in focus, it changes the way the light reaches the film. Now you can get some really cool artistic shots, you can get really cool focus created by doing that, but if that's not your intention, it could cause you to take some images you're not happy with. Now what I do, and I've showed this trick before in my how-to video, which I'll link right there, is when I go to shoot my Jollylook, I'll hold one hand here and I'll make sure that the bellows is straight. I make sure the camera is straight. And I'll come through and I will take my shot and I'll develop it. Now, if I want to add some artsies, I can push the lens board forward, or I can pull the lens board back a little bit, and it changes the way the light reaches the film. But if that's not your intent, it could cause an issue for you. So what I'll usually do to solve that is, if I am out shooting, I have several pencils that I cut into different lengths in order to match the 4 different positions of the camera, so your really close position or your infinity focus kind of position, in order to, I just kind of slide the pencil in there and it pushes that forward and holds the Jollylook planes, the film back and the lens plate, perfectly straight and parallel to one another, so I don't get those weird kind of effects. And I'll show the picture of my dog again, because as you can see, her ears are out of focus, and I was doing that on purpose because I was playing with this front lens board to kind of get a cool effect. I didn't know exactly what it was gonna do, but it came out kind of cool. So that's number 1, to make sure you don't get kind of off photos, is to make sure that your 2 planes are parallel to one another. That way the light isn't traveling in increased or shortened distances and kind of getting you those weird effects. So the last portion of this video actually got corrupted before I could edit it, and I've actually had a haircut since then, so excuse the change. But I wanted to wrap it up by saying that the Jollylook camera is an analog camera. That's the most important thing to remember. Because it's an analog camera with very limited settings, you only have 2 shutter speeds and you're limited on your ISO, it makes it so it's not really a I can use this anywhere kind of camera. I can't use this in my living room, my lights aren't bright enough. I can only really use it outside, and that's primarily where I use it anyways. That's what I wanted out of the Jollylook. I wanted a camera that went in my pocket when I'm walking around town or I'm on break or anything along those lines. I can take some cool photos, get some cool results, and really it does exactly what I want it to do. And it is, again, a very difficult camera to use. It's not really indoor friendly. I'm actually gonna do a little bit of a slideshow with some of my favorite images I've captured to show you guys that yes, the Jollylook does work. It is a functioning camera, but it has its limitations. And because of those limitations, I thought this video was appropriate. I've seen a lot of commentary lately and a lot of videos about how the Jollylook sucks or it doesn't work or anything along those lines. And I have to say that I haven't had any issues working within those limitations that the camera has. Now, the camera that Jollylook just had the Kickstarter wrap up on will be that automated camera. It'll have a built-in shutter speed, it has a built-in flash, it has a rechargeable battery, and that's more of your snapshot camera. That one you can use inside and all that, but with an analog camera, you don't have those options. You're very limited, and because of that, it forces you to find creative ways to get the shot that you want. It forces you to think outside the box. There's a podcast I listen to, his name is David, and I will link the podcast down below actually because I really like it. And he actually just did a podcast about creative limitations and how having rules and having to work within those bounds forces your creativity and forces you to think more creatively than if you have unlimited freedom, because then you get overwhelmed with choices. So those are the 5 tips, tricks, and hacks that I use when I'm out and about with my Jollylook camera to ensure that I get the photos that I want to get with it. So thank you guys again so much for joining me today. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you guys like the video, please share it. I have all my social media links down below, as well as my t-shirts. I'll have a link down below in the description so you guys can order your very own Jollylook camera. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for joining me. Bye.